This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show for you today. Our guest today, retired U.S. Army Colonel Adam Rocke and General Paul E. Funk II, the second Funk, who are both board members at Katie's Way Plus. Their mission is to provide world-class behavioral health care to the military community with a focus on optimizing mental fitness. It's like doing push-ups for your brain when your brain is being dumb. I think that's exactly how it works. They have locations in a handful of states and are expanding. So this is a program that many Legion posts are engaging in with their communities and a great fit for our own Be the One mission. So before we chat with Adam and Paul, Stacy, what do you have? What do you have for us today?
Well, I've got a lot, but it sounds like you need to do some mental push-ups, my friend. Sheesh.
Sorry, was that too intense?
I'll
back off.
Release, Joe, release.
Hey, did you guys know that Friday is Rosie the Riveter Day?
Sweet. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and since it's National Women's History Month, I thought I would give those strong, courageous women a nice big shout out for all their hard work. Also, I want to give a We Can Do It social media challenge to all those guys and gals out there who are tuning in. Simply roll up your sleeves, strike a classic Rosie the Riveter pose. Was that one? Like strong arm, and then snap a pic, post it to social media, spread the spirit of strength and solidarity. You can do this by yourself or as a group, or get all your Legionnaires together, do a group shot, and share a real life story of a special, strong person in your life. Be sure to tag the American Legion and use some fun hashtags, like, for example, hashtag TAL podcast or hashtag We Can Do It, hashtag Women History Month. Fun hashtags like that.
Well, if you do the Rosie Riveter pose, don't do it like Joe, which was actually kind of like the Fighting Irishman from Notre Dame.
Oh yeah.
So like, don't do that one. Do the Riveter.
Do the actual. You don't have to be a gal to do this, to strike a Rosie Riveter pose, but show your strength and solidarity. Hey, do you guys have any special story you can share? A real life Rosie in your life?
Actually, I want to give a shout out. Now, my wife's fantastic, don't get me wrong, but my daughter did a one-act play that she played a factory worker, and I forget the name of the play, but she had a monologue after her love interest that, women had taken over the factories at this point as workers, and the conditions were super unsafe. And her love interest had gotten killed, and she had this monologue that she had to do, and it's my kid, so I'm not really thinking much of it. And I don't know what she tapped into. She said that she tapped into like everything that I'd been through and the loss that I had experienced. And she just did this beautiful, beautiful monologue. And I was in tears at the end of it. If you can imagine me crying of all people.
What?
She absolutely blew me away with that. So I actually, although it's not military related, I mean, honestly, it made me more interested in that era of women than any other thing that I've ever seen in my life.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think a lot about like the strength beyond measure of like my wife and my mom, even because I have 3 brothers and we all served, 3 of us in the global war on terror. So for like a good 10 years, like one of us was always deployed, and just what she went through, knowing how intense, her prayers were for us. And then, yeah, my wife as well, staying in all the moms, right. Being able to stay home or spouses, and do what's needed to do, whether it's, childcare or like Rosie and what it embodied, being able to step up and do the things outside of the home, that were needed in that time period. So I think that, warriors that leave can only truly come home when there's a home and the strength beyond measure of those that endured to be able to come back to. So I think it's cyclical and all parts are needed. It's beautiful.
Man, that's awesome. Those are great stories. I think my real life Rosie, so recently, there was a movie that came out about the 6888, the all African American women who deployed to help during World War II to help to get the post spread out during World War II to the service members out there. And I was so tickled when I saw Elizabeth Barker Johnson recognized at the end of the movie. And she's a lady that I photographed for the Veterans Portrait Project. And an amazing woman. When she came home from the war, she was a school teacher and gave back to her community for decades. And so humble. And just the love that she gave to so many people, and that reverberated through her community and the lives that she touched. And I think that's the kind of person that I always want to emulate and be. And I think if we want to be a real life Rosie, I want to be Elizabeth Barker Johnson when I grow up. So that's my real life Rosie story. Alphas, if you have a real life Rosie moment, roll up your sleeve, strike a pose, share it on social media, tag the Legion, and be sure to use those fun hashtags.
Do you think that she would allow us to share that picture that you took of her? Because I think that would be really powerful.
Let's do it. We can do it. Hashtag.
We can do it. All right.
Hashtag
Cool.
we can do it. All right, Alphas, please stick around. We'll be back with retired U.S. Army Colonel Adam Rocke and General Paul E. Funk II right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
All right, Alphas, today we're joined by retired U.S. Army General Paul E. Funk II and Colonel Adam Rocke. Gentlemen, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Well, I really appreciate you having me today. Thank you.
What a great name, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that. So I used to start, for 42 years, I started this. My name's Funk, and I'm an American soldier.
Love it.
And
there's expectations, though. You can't just be like, hey, my name's Funk. And that's like Levy. You got something to hit there.
That's right.
I say something. My intro has been, my name's Adam Rocke, and I'm a soldier for life.
Yep, that's right. And that's what I was going to follow with now is after those 42 years of service, now it's soldier for life, right? So that's where we are in this phase of the operation.
No, I like it. Gentlemen, thank you both for your service. I am lucky to kick this podcast off with you both. And since I had the luxury of, getting to know you through my research and preparation for this podcast, I got to read your bios, got to dig into the programs that you've done. And of course, I know you from your long Army careers, and likely the Alphas who are tuning in know a bit about you through your military careers as well. So I'm not going to belabor what we know already from what's out there. So I want to start out talking to you a little bit about what we may not know. Like, where are you from originally? What brought you into the Army? Like, why did you choose the Army? And then maybe a little bit about what about after the Army? What were those days like after you hung up the uniform and you had to pick out your first outfit? How disorientating was that? And go.
I'm going to let Adam go first.
All right, so you're sure? Okay, I'll try to be brief but the general and my story is somewhat similar from a long lineage of military service, honestly. And you said, Stacy, why is you served? After graduating high school a long time ago, I just wasn't ready to move on to college. But I had a great grandfather who was in World War I. I had an uncle was in the Korean War, Pork Chop Hill. My father, as a matter of fact, today's the 80th anniversary for the Battle of Iwo Jima. My father was Marine Raider on Iwo Jima back in the day. So, it's a celebration for him. Then I had a brother who was in the 82nd Airborne as a company commander in the infantry and airborne range. And I said, man, I'd sure like to do that. So I raised my right hand and volunteered to serve. And I was selected to go to the old guard, and I served in the old guard for a number of years. But then I realized that this is really my passion. I like this stuff. There's something about the Army, the discipline, the physical fitness, and the friendships. Actually, the camaraderie was just off the charts. I said, I'm going to do this for a living. And I went back to school, got a commission from the University of Miami in Florida. And then rest is really history, is because I just served another 30 years in uniform in airborne Ranger, Striker units. And, just got the opportunity to not only serve our country, but serve alongside some of the greatest men and women I've ever met in my entire life. So, and one of the people is on this call with us right there is General Paul Funk, who we actually, our story, you'll probably get to it, but we met on the battlefield of Baghdad, and now he can't get rid of me. And I've been, so we served in the military together, and we'll tell you our story a little bit. We're both serving as soldiers for life, though, in our civilian capacity as well. But I would do it all over again. I was telling my son last night, I was at my American Legion post 176, here in Springfield, Virginia, largest post in Virginia. And I was telling my son when we had a cold, chilly one in our hand that I would do this all over again, honestly. I mean, there were some rough days in combat, as the general and you all understand, but it is totally worth it. And, it's the people you serve with, and I'd do it again. It was an honor. But that's my story, Stacy.
And of course, I can't top that, right? So I'm a son of the Army. I grew up, my dad's a soldier, my father-in-law's a soldier. My grandfather Brown served in World War II in the Navy. But I saw my dad flying a Cobra helicopter in 1969, and I didn't realize he was going. So I was 7 years old, and I said, "Man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen." And so, and then I grew up playing team sports, and so I went to high school at Fort Knox High School in Kentucky. I went to off to Montana State, but I started in 1976 in the junior ROTC program at Fort Knox High School, and so I was wearing a uniform for the country from 1976 on, and frankly, wearing the cloth of your nation makes you grow up a little earlier. It makes you stand a little taller. And it makes you realize that the man and woman to your left and right are the people you serve for. So fast forward, I did ROTC and joined the Montana National Guard as a simultaneous membership program. Guys, so I was commissioned in 1982 as a second lieutenant of armor. And then what was in the Fox Troop of the 2nd and 163rd Armored Cavalry Regiment out of Butte, Montana. And from there, I came on active duty at Fort Hood. I was born at Fort Hood. I eventually got married at Fort Hood. So that I have 15 years of service across this great post in Texas. So culminating in the fact that my dad and I are one of two Army families that commanded the same corps in the history of the Army. The other family is a family named Abrams. And so they commanded 5th Corps, and Dad and I commanded 3rd Corps. So there's a little bit of history here for us in Texas, and I've been honored, frankly, I was honored to wear the uniform for 42 years. I don't count the junior ROTC time in there, but wear the uniform and the cloth of the nation, right? So I'm sure, Stacy, you found somewhere out there in the dark nether regions of the internet, the Funk's Fundamentals. Number 40 is on that list is leave your jersey in a better place. So the uniform we wear, no matter what service, the uniform we wore represents two things around the globe: hope and fear, and they're in equal measure. Because our adversaries realize when we join the battle, we're there to stay, to win. And those that need help, those that are downtrodden, those that need a helping hand, whether it be from a natural disaster or because they're run by some sort of despot, they realize that we'll be their best friends. And frankly, the honor to lead that jersey, that cloth of our nation, in a better place every day was what kept me going for 42 years.
That's awesome.
So, I'm gonna follow that up with one quick question that we didn't get around to was, what was that day after retirement like for you?
A celebration, right?
Okay.
I had 2 weeks before I was due to retire, I got the opportunity to be the senior leader of DoD's Warrior Games at Disney World. And I watched those young men and women overcoming terrible odds and terrible injuries to perform in a competitive environment again. And I was honored to be with them. And I watched, I was feeling kind of sorry for myself as I was starting to get out of the Army and everything, because we all do, right? We miss the camaraderie, we miss the people, the mission. We miss the sense of purpose, right? That our military service brings us. However, when I watched I watched moms and dads and husbands and wives overcoming obstacles far greater than anything I was going to. So I was okay when it was time to go, because I knew if they could overcome those obstacles, I had no right to feel sorry for myself. I too needed to strap on my tanker boots and move on smartly, right? That's what I needed to do. And so from that point on, I was good to go.
Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I think somewhat similar. I was scared, nervous. I knew that that the next chapter of my life was about now fully taking care of the family and bringing in revenue and trying to find what it is I want to do in life. I was a little different than most retiring military members, because I had been the director of the Army Soldier for Life program. So as the director, I met a lot of folks. I did a lot of networking for the Army, but that network helped me build my own network. So my transition into a career, I just really had to decide who it is and what it is I wanted to do. But so the scariest part I go back to was about the family. What's next? Where did we want to live? And what did I want to do? So I have settled here in Northern Virginia because I retired out of the Pentagon, and we love where we live. I don't know if it's our forever home or not. If the general would give me a little plot of land on his ranch in Texas, maybe I'd move down there, but we'll have to see. But no, but I will say, I stepped into a role as a vice president of Veterans Affairs for a company called Fastport. And, the hardest part about transition was figuring out what to wear each day, because now as an executive,
right.
to be totally honest with you, I was an executive trying to wear suit and tie and make sure it all matched and all this kind of stuff. So a funny story, another buddy of mine, Chuck Hodges, another colonel, we were both in the same battalion together. I was the ops officer. He was the executive officer. We both retired similarly at the same time. We traveled a little bit, advocating for veterans on a host of things, employment and wellness. But we would literally be in the airport looking at other guys saying, look at that outfit. Does that match? Look at those socks. Look at that tie. Look at that suit. Maybe take a picture. They thought we were probably, stalking them, but we were trying to figure out exactly, what went with what. But yeah, joking aside, it has all worked out well because I followed my true north, and my passion was to always help our military community. So that's exactly what the general and I have dedicated our post-transition life to. So from that perspective, it's worked out well. And
absolutely. So, and I had a similar opportunity to excel in the clothing arena, but for 42 years, I knew what I was going to wear, right? So what you need is garanimals for the elderly. That's what.
Oh
that's
my
what
gosh.
it should be.
That's what my husband said. So the day after he retired from the Air Force, he walked out in camo shorts and a striped shirt, and he said, "Honey, does this match?" And I said, "Oh, baby, no, it doesn't." Like, I need garanimals. I need to match the labels. And I'm so glad you said that, Paul, because goodness, I think everyone does. Like the day after they get out, there's something.
It's true, and fortunately for me, like Adam, I had a friend of mine who was a CEO of a company in Austin, Texas, who we met, and his passion was veteran, great jobs for veterans and getting veterans off the street, right? To attacking the homeless problem. He's a remarkable soldier for life himself, and his name's Larry Smith. Larry Smith is the CEO of a program called Community First, which runs an operation called Mobile Loaves and Fishes, which has fed more than 7 million meals to homeless in Austin, Texas. And they've built 4 tiny home communities that are world class to help. And of course, a big percentage of his population are actually veterans. So it is neat to see those kinds of folks giving back in those kinds of programs. Larry hired me on. He and I have been working workforce development for multiple years, finding great jobs for veterans so they don't live on the streets, so they have great opportunities. So that's been our passion, and he and I are well out down the road at building some transition centers to really help our veterans as they retire out of the Central Texas area. And really, it's about community, right? As we retire, and everybody has, whether you're a 4-star general or an E4, everybody goes through a transition period. I've been fortunate to go through and have some friends and do some planning and things, but that absence of purpose truly does affect each one of us.
Yeah.
So refinding your community, building back with your tribe is important. And that's why organizations like the Legion are so important.
Speaking on that, I've been thinking about leadership a lot, because a lot of times people come out of the military and there's characters that I mean, just straight up wild people that come out of the military that have leadership qualities. So my question being, what principles of character do you believe are most crucial for success in that transition and from military to civilian life? And how can the Legion help foster transferring those in-service skills to its members in the broader community? And I know this isn't directly related to what we've talked about, but it's something that I think that leadership qualities include following. I mean, knowing when you're around someone who knows something better than you, really good leaders show up and they listen and they wait and they plan.
Followership and listening are incredibly good skills, Joe. Absolutely.
Sir, take the lead.
So, Adam, why don't you take that on? Because your role at hiring our heroes was, right up your alley.
You see, I was deferred to the general. You deferred it back to the colonel. How's that? Pretty good, huh?
That's called delegation, Adam.
Exactly.
Good, Adam.
Yeah, exactly right.
No,
he knows that. He knows that well.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, that's why the general and I have teamed up together in a couple endeavors post-transition to help, with leaders and help our service members, transition successfully into careers. It's not just about a job. I feel that when you raise your right hand, you're not guaranteed a job. You just need an opportunity for the interview, and you'll win the day because of who you are and the skills that you bring and what you learned. And sometimes it's not about what's on the resume. It's around how you can articulate that in a conversation more than anything, because a lot of people don't quite understand what we did in our military career, and they just don't get it. So unless companies are, I call them veteran ready, Joe, and have hired somebody like, who's retired from the military or served the military to cull through those resumes and understand some of that jargon, you might have a difficult time. So, you're right to get the interview, the right resume to get the interview, and you'll win the day. But, the character, I think what the Army and the military do best, they build leaders of character who are there for a lifetime of service. And I think that's all of us here on this call, right? So, and I think that's what you're hiring for. You're hiring for folks that have the skill set, but go beyond the skill set that you want. And what do you want them to be? Because we're trainable, right? We've all gone through MOS training, right? We're disciplined. We know that. I've had some examples of some trucking companies say to me, you're sending us incredible quality, but you got to tell all the people that you sent us, they cannot get here at 5:45, jump over the fence and PMCS their tires and their trucks before everybody else, to making the rest of the workforce look bad. Okay. So my point is that we're just really disciplined and we can do a lot of things. And the other one I say too is, a lot of people say, The only thing I did in the Army was a sniper, which is a very important position, right? But the sniper skill set is remarkable in itself, right? It goes from the tactical to the strategic, if you want. You make the
Yeah, it's
one
hit or
shot,
miss.
and that's the strategic. But think about all the logistics and all the planning and all the execution to lead up to that one shot that could have a profound effect on, at a strategic level, as the general can understand. I use that example to say that's hard to articulate in a resume. That's hard to articulate anywhere. So the young man or woman who served in that position needs an opportunity to express themselves to somebody. When they do that, I think they'll win the day and get the jobs that they want, because you're hiring for the talent, you're hiring, and the fact that they're going to be and hopefully an entire employee for life.
I mean, there's a mindset that you can't create. It's inside somebody, and it's fostered through some very careful growth, and sometimes that growth can be hard, and it's not something that somebody can just learn to do by reading. And so, I 100%, I love what you're saying, and I just wanted to add one thing to the general. I was also, well, you said you were a son of Army. I was a son of something. I can't remember what they used to call me. A real son of a. Anyway.
Gun, I think gun, Joe.
So it might have been Gun. Yeah, like the old movie with Emilio Estevez and Bon Jovi. So yeah.
Adam, you were cracking me up when you were talking about employers saying that the military folks are making others look bad, because I hear that so much in the veteran community.
Yeah.
Where people are like, hey, can you back it off a little bit, because it's making us look bad. I'm like, well, why don't you rise to the occasion instead?
Yeah. And frankly, in great organizations that have fantastic culture, they will, Stacy. And Frank, I think that's one of the things we should be training our folks to recognize, is that culture trumps just about everything, so especially as it relates to going back to finding your purpose, right? So an organizational culture will attract, a good culture will attract great people. Great people will hold each other accountable and responsible, and then they will begin to build on that as a means for success. So I think we should be training our guys and gals to find those great organizational cultures that fit their needs, wants, values, and perspective. And that's not easy, right? That's not easy to do. Well, it requires more than looking at the scope of work or looking at the duties as performed. What it really does is we've got to be good at asking questions and then listening for those kinds of things that Joe kind of highlighted. We got to be good listeners, and we got to be looking for organizational cultures that fit how we were trained or grown up. Well, that's a skill set that's not being utilized as much as it should be, frankly.
I couldn't agree more, sir. And that's a really good segue to organizational culture that I wanted to dig in a little bit with you here. Like we were talking before we started recording that I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas from 2009 to 2013. So that was overlapping with your time there. I believe you were there from 2011 to 2015. And so I actually finished my company command in PCS just prior to you becoming the commanding general of the 1st Infantry Division. So that installation has such a strong and storied legacy. It's where I did all my operational time as a Apache platoon leader. I deployed to Iraq in 2010. I was the S4 for a while, deployed, assistant S3 and battle captain. Then I came back and I took company command of Charlie Company, 1-1 Attack Reconnaissance Battalion, 1st Combat Aviation Brigade, 1st Infantry Division. I'm ones all the way through, sir.
There you go, man. You're going to be one, be a big red one.
That's right. My first son was born at Fort Riley. So when I found out that you were going to be a guest on this podcast, well, it's very meaningful to me, as you might imagine. To this day, I have such an immense amount of pride that I got to take the big red one on my arm into combat. And as I reflect on the division's motto today, it's choking me up, I realize that it's been a really major point, a major ethos guiding my life 10 years later since leaving the service, reflecting back on it. So I'd like to know what it's meant to you, sir, all these years later, and this time, no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first.
Duty first, victory. Exactly right. That 4-year period that I was in the Big Red One, from the Deputy Commanding General for Maneuver through a deployment to Afghanistan, and then coming back as the CG from 13 to 15, and then being the first headquarters back into Iraq in 2014, where all the chips were down, and what they did was call us and say, General Odierno called me in personally and said, "Are you ready to go?" And I said, yes. There was no train up. There was none of that. We're ready to go because we're the Big Red One. And that's what we stand for, right? And those that came before us, Joe, you were in the Battle of Fallujah. There's a great Big Red One trooper who was a recipient of the Medal of Honor from that fight. His name's David Bellavia. Bellavia was 2-2 infantry. Great soldier. Great friend of mine. But he is immensely proud to wear that Big Red One patch, right? So when I retired, on my right sleeve, although I commanded 3rd Corps in combat in 2017, 2018, when we declared victory in Iraq, and the Prime Minister declared victory in Iraq, and then we took back Rocke, the patch I wore when I left the Army was the Big Red One. So I absolutely concur with you that I am immensely proud to say my name's Funk, and I'm a Big Red One soldier.
Roger that, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The greatest officers, mentors, and leaders in my life that set me on a path and trajectory to do the many things that I've done, being a continued soldier for life in service to our community. And my work and trajectory has been within the arena of veteran mental health these last 10 years. And that's what's led me to be, here on this podcast, advocating for therapies that saved our brothers and sisters' lives, and my actual brother's life, who was a SF Green Beret, medically retired for TBI. And Colonel Rocke, I'll bring this back to you about, transition, because, my transition was, I was excited to get out at the 10-year mark and start this nonprofit with my brother to end TBIs for the veteran community 10 years ago when not many people were talking about it. And the hardest part about my transition was when we couldn't raise enough funds to get enough people the treatment to the solution set that we had found. And I had to go back and get a regular job to provide for the family. Yeah. And I felt so disconnected from that, once again, that mission and that purpose. Yeah. And so, Colonel Rocke, you spent your career focused on soldier transitions, both during service and afterward, your time leading Soldier for Life, hiring our heroes. What are the gaps that you think that still exist in helping service members transition successfully? And what can organizations and partnerships like the American Legion do to better support them?
Yeah, thanks. Great question, honestly. One of the biggest gaps, and I've traveled the globe literally, talking to audiences about transition, and it's not that they defining what it is they want to do, what we want to do when you get out is probably the hardest part, because all you've known is one thing, whether that's skill, if you're in the Army and you have an IT background, you're an engineer, whatnot, and you don't want to do that anymore for any reason, but you better figure out what it is you want to do, because you could end up being in one of those tiny homes like Joe talked about, homeless or whatnot, because you just really have to accept responsibility that finding a job is a job in itself, and you got to be full-time at it when you get ready to transition out. So decide what it is you want to do, and then pursue it vigorously on getting there. Meaning, if I wanted to be a nurse, for example, but I wasn't a nurse in the Army, then there are certain credentials and licensures I need. Well, you need to go pursue those, get that continued education. That's why the General and I talked up front about the workforce development programs that we're deeply involved, because that's exactly what we want to do. We want to provide as much, skills out there to help our servicemen and women, those military spouses, prepare for transition or transition to successful jobs by upskilling them, right? So I talked about figuring out what it is you want to do. But then the next part is vigorously get upskilled, okay? And that's what the beauty of what the Career Skills Program or the Skill Bridge policy that DoD put out, which is incredibly meaningful. That allows them to prepare themselves with a skill set prior to leaving with a guaranteed interview. How's that? Not a guaranteed job. You got to earn the job, but a guaranteed interview. And I think that policy in itself was a game changer across the board. And that's why companies keep coming to the military, because they believe in the talent. They know that's talented, right? They want to upskill them and want to put them into the workforce with them. So I think that's the biggest thing to answer your question, Adam, is you really do got to figure out what it is you want to do, and then you got to pursue it aggressively.
Well, that's a great response. General Funk, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would add, find your tribe too. I would do that. And if you don't know exactly what you want to do, find your tribe and talk to them about it, right? So we're used to mentoring each other and helping each other finding purpose and direction and finding activities and skills. So find that tribe, reach out. Don't think for a minute that you're bothering someone, right? Because they may be in the same place you are. So there's a ton of different organizations, but one of the really important ones I've listened to and done a lot of work with is one called Army Col. And frankly, those guys, and Adam's that Truth First shirt that he's got on, the Army Col program is amazing. And it's just reaching out, right? Talk to somebody, find your tribe, let your tribe help you. And if by doing that, you're going to regain your purpose. And then from regaining your purpose, you're going to find direction and motivation. That's the way it works. And so, all these programs won't work if you don't let somebody help you find them.
And that program the general talked about, the Warrior Call, started by the Troops First Foundation, which he and I are both advocates and tied to, as, if you will, advisors. But we ironically both met him on the battlefield too of Iraq, and then we've been connected with him ever since. Though it's about very closely aligns with Be the One campaign. Okay, Be the One campaign is advocacy for veteran suicide. How to reach out to your battle buddies, right, that are isolated or in need and in crisis, and get them the right help. So that's why the Warrior Call is exactly that. It's to make a call. Take a call and have an honest conversation with our battle buddies, right? All right. Once a year is the Warrior Call Initiative. It's the Sunday after Veterans Day. Every year there was a resolution, bipartisan resolution passed in the House and the Senate for the last 3 years in a row. But it's more than just one day, right? The impetus of it is to make every day Warrior Call Day, or Be the One Day, however we want to call it right here. But is folks like us on this call reaching to our buddies, checking on them, how you doing, really getting an asthma check on them. But if they're hurting, get them the right help they need, right? Because it takes a village, back to what the general said, all right? Find your tribe, it takes a village, and let's connect them with the right resource.
That's right.
And that's why I think Be the One campaign and the American Legion is so vital right now for what we're doing as a BSO. I think what you're doing, the podcast, is just remarkable, not just because you have the general and I on, but the posts that we have, the thousands of posts, that's your tribe as well. It's more than just drinking a $3 beer. It's about sitting next to the Vietnam veteran last night to tell me about their stories and me to listen. All right. It's about bringing my son in to learn about the stories of the next generation. It's about us coming together. It's about the community efforts that the Legion does, from Boys State to legislation on the Hill to Be the One. The list of things go on. So that's why I think our BSO, that I'm a PUFL member for life, and I'm such a big proponent of, does so much and so good for our veterans. We just need to bring in more of the younger generation, if you will, but that's another topic.
When we first started talking and we did our introductions, you said that you both met when you were in Baghdad. What year was that?
2006, during the surge period. The general had been there as colonel, brigade commander, and I was the brigade S3 for the 3-2 Striker Brigade under then Colonel Steve Townsend. And we actually met because it was a very difficult time in Baghdad. The general could elaborate on this, but
Yeah.
we were surging forces there, and my brigade was the first surge brigade. We were a large striker brigade, and we were sharing combat power. How's that?
Yeah.
We ended up sharing a battalion of ours under now retired Ken Camper, Major General Ken Camper. What a great guy! The Field Artillery Battalion Commander, got attached to the colonel, the General Funk's brigade right there, and we met then. And it was just shared hardship. It was so it's interesting that we also formed a company. This is not supposed to be an advertisement from it, but the reason is FMR Leadership Solutions. The general and I are together with two other partners who are also in his brigade. So you talk about sharing hardships together, and now continuing to your service together, if you will, in a company post transition with people that you care about and that you love. That there's nothing more valuable that I could even think about.
Well, I was going to ask you if there was like a pivotal moment during that particular time. So that was during the surge. Did that take you all the way through 2007 as well?
Some of us have got the opportunity to stay till 2008 even.
Oh, how lucky!
We got the good 15-month deal there, right? So
I was in Warhorse. Well, I was in that AOR too during that time.
Yeah, okay.
So I wasn't in the suck with you guys.
You go.
So was there like a catalyst or a moment, a shared time? Because we all walked away from that moment unchanged. That you came home and you realized that you brought baggage with you, and that you needed to ask for help yourself. And it takes real strength to ask for that help. What was that moment like for you? And did it happen immediately, or was it years later where you were like, I need to make a call for myself?
It was actually, Stacy, for me, it was actually years later, right? So here's why. Because I was a brigade commander during the surge, 06, 08, my tremendous Iron Horse team, which participated and fought beside Steve Townsend and Mike Garrett, and you name it. The guys that were there were heroes in our fight, right? So it was years later. It was actually as I started to transition out of the Army that I realized I was going to what I thought was going to happen is I was going to lose that community.
Mm-hmm.
I really did, and it started to put me. Happened to be during the pandemic as well.
Okay.
And what I found was I got a little lost, right? And then I told you the story about going to the Warrior Games and seeing that and watching those kids heal and grow and compete and overcome incredible obstacles. And then at that moment in time, I watched a father and a mother. I'm sorry I get a little emotional at this one, but I watched a father and a mother watch their little girl get on her bike. She was missing a leg, and her dad the tears were coming down his face, but the look on his face was one of, I'm getting my little girl back. There she is. I can see her. She's a fierce competitor. And from that instant on, I began to heal myself,
mm-hmm.
right? And I watched that, and I said, okay, come on now, let's get this done. And so then I dedicated myself for workforce development and veterans opportunity in the semiconductor industry. And then, frankly, from that, I'm now executive in residence at a university down here in Texas, where we're advocating, we're building a military transition center oriented on various skill sets that are going to give veterans great jobs coming out in the Central Texas area. If you haven't heard, we're growing fast and growing hard down here in this part of the world. And there's going to be a remarkable opportunity for veterans because people appreciate our discipline, our work ethic, our ability to, believe it or not, to follow instructions, our focus on safety and the processes that there, and the fact that many of us have security clearances, right? If you want to work in the nuclear energy business, you got to have a secret clearance even to start.
I don't know how that anybody ever trusted me with a top secret, but they gave me one.
Well, there you go.
I was curious, in my research leading up to this interview, I stumbled into the Katie's Way Plus, and you mentioned very briefly the semiconductor. Was that what you were kind of touching on for just really briefly, or was that something else?
No, that's something else completely. Katie's Way Plus is a mental health company that's focused on.
But it has, and for the alpha doctor listening, it has this helmet that looks like that could be like straight out of Back to the Future, where Doc was wearing the whole helmet thing, and it looks so futuristic and it's crazy. Can you explain to me how PTSD has anything to do with what this futuristic helmet is?
Actually, what the process is called is deep transcranial magnetic stimulation. So it's really using magnets, and in Europe right now they're using it for all kinds of recovery, not just mental health, but all kinds of injuries, joint replacement, you name it. In Europe, we're just now getting on that trend here in the States.
Okay.
We've had our TMS before, and TMS has been a process for a while, but the DTMS piece, the deep transcranial, is getting after parts of the brain we never were able to touch before. And coupled with with med management and counseling, it gives us a really good platform to attack the mental health issue in the nation, to attack it in a variety of different ways. Some people do need meds, many don't. So if we can give you options where your treatment plan, it actually allows you to continue to serve, for example, because we focus mostly on active duty and their families, but if it'll allow you to maintain your security clearance and continue to serve, and you don't have the meds that kind of disassociate, that's a huge win, right? So it gives you options. And it's all about giving our active duty service members, their families, and our veterans options in their own treatment, right? In their own treatment. And that's where we want to be. One size doesn't fit all. It's an individual plan to help us all overcome these kinds of obstacles.
My original question here that I was planning on leaning to is in-demand skills and career paths. But I think we've touched on something that I think covers, and if we're going to have just a few more minutes of your time, I feel like this is something that I want to touch on. So for people that haven't read Sebastian Junger, can you talk about tribe? Because I feel like we've used the term in a deeper way than anyone who hasn't read On Belonging and Homecoming, who hasn't read, does not understand what we mean by tribe, because it's a much bigger word than what most people think.
It really is. And frankly, the elements of tribe go all the way back thousands of years, right? Yeah. And the rituals and the processes that those warriors went through when they came back from combat and conflict.
Whether it's bow and arrows, spears, or guns.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really does not matter. There was an element of ceremony, an element of healing, and an element of reflection. My wife happens to be a yogi. She owns her own yoga academy, and she teaches yoga teachers.
I knew a bear that did
and
that.
She is a big proponent of the mindfulness and the ceremony of return, and healing and growth and reflection as it relates to mental health. Warrior, the whole thing, the whole process started because warriors were coming home from conflict, and they needed a way to release and grow and let their systems settle so that they could enter back into normal life, right? I think we need to get back to some of these things. We've actually skipped some of these processes. We were turning the military over so fast, so hard through the last 20 years that we lost the fact that the tribe matters. And so we were splitting it up way too fast. Our process began to become a conveyor belt of unit readiness, as opposed to the tribe healing together and then moving on to another set of circumstances. So when you connect, the combat soldier is the most elite fraternity and sorority in the world. No one, unless you've gone through that crucible of combat together, no one understands that bond, that total purpose, the total focus it takes to make sure your brother or sister in the foxhole next to you stays alive. Nobody understands that unless you've been in it. And so we, as a tribe, as a community, need to start telling these stories. And we need to grow from it. And we need to learn from it. And then we need to help the next generation get ready, right? We need to help the next generation get ready.
And I think that's kind of what I was thinking of when you were using the term tribe. For many of us, it is the Legion.
Yes.
It's an opportunity to be a part of something big again. It's a part
Yep.
of and not only that, when you're a member of the Legion, you get to steer what happens. I mean, you have power and leaders rise very quickly. I mean, you go to the convention and you'll talk to more than one person who's like, yeah, I've been with the Legion for 3 years. I'm a post commander. And I love those stories because, in the absence of people that want to step up and be leaders, there's opportunity there. And you mentioned the rituals of a tribe. It's same thing with the military and how we do things. And it's in that reflection of post combat. We sit around and we joke around and even if we're not talking big fish or big war stories, at the end of spending time with other veterans, you feel more connected to humans than you felt in a while, and you didn't realize you missed it as badly as you did until you get a chance to do that.
Connection.
Yeah.
Connection as it relates to community are the keys to the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, back to your point, Joe, that's why I'm obviously I'm biased because I love the Legion and I spent a lot of time at my Legion. All right. And because just the people are amazing. The programs we have are just remarkable. And my daughter is also one of the bartenders there. So it's also fun to go down there, see Hannah behind the bar. But, funny, last night I was just sitting next to a guy, my son on one side, and the other side is a friend of mine, Royce, who was Marine. And I knew he was Marine, but one thing led to another, Joe, and we started talking about the Battle of Fallujah. And I don't know if I didn't tell you this, but my battalion, 123 Infantry, was a shaping effort for the Battle of Fallujah in 2004. As a matter of fact, so we're on the outside softening the blow for you. And there was an immediate connection, though. And you're talking about the tribe. I can just sense that Royce and I, are just a little bit closer now. Our bond, before it was a handshake, it was a beer, it was a high and all that. So now there's a shared hardship of the ground that he was on, and I know the ground, he knows the ground I was on, and I know the ground he was on, whether we saw each other in passing or not, whatnot. But that comes out. And that in conversation, and I think I have a couple of tribes, though. There is one tribe, it's the Legion, but I am also obviously in business, if you will, but it's beyond business with General Funk, General Pat Michaelis, and Colonel Chris Manglemont. That's my other tribe. We speak a lot, but we can sense, when somebody's hurting. We can sense when I like to think this, the general cares about me and my family. I care about him and his family. So this tribe is really important too. So he talked up front about culture of the organization that you work. The culture is important. I'm in a small company, startup company, but the culture is exactly what I was hoping it would be. So that's my second tribe.
It really does matter. And one of our issues, frankly, that the Legion can help with is our unit organizations. A lot of kids have served in multiple places. I say kids. A lot of us have served in multiple units, right? Over if you do me, I actually have 5 different combat patches I can wear, which is great, except for the fact that what community do I own to? For example, I was fortunate enough to command in the 1st Cavalry Division, right? I was the brigade commander I was Iron Horse 6, all caps, one word. Frankly, I went to that, and that was during the surge, the most powerful combat in Iraq at the time, right? So I was there. Went on to the Big Red One, multiple deployments with the Big Red One. Went back as the 3rd Corps commander. I went to war with my dad as my division commander, as a company commander. He was my division commander.
Wow.
So that remarkable time period, that was Desert Storm, by the way. My dad commanded the 3rd Armored Division. But across that 30 years, where is my tribe when I leave? Right? Where do I want to fit? How do I want to? I don't want to torque off one set of guys when they have the other. My dad was a troop commander in Vietnam. He commanded Apache Troop 19 Cav in Vietnam. They still have a reunion to this day. They still get hundreds of people just to come there. Gold Star families, spouses, troopers from the whole era, but they are headhunters. They are the 19 Cav. An Apache troop, was there, and he was there 69 to 70. So when they went into Cambodia, and they have those stories, but he becomes Captain Funk as soon as he walks in the room. He retired as a 3-star general, as the Corps commander, but when he walks in that room, he's Captain Funk. It's remarkable that our tribe recognizes where we were.
Yeah. Do you make him call you sir after you
No,
picked up?
are you kidding me?
All right. Just figured out what to ask. I mean,
yeah.
Well, General Funk and Colonel Rocke, as we come to a close here, you guys have both led and shaped hundreds of thousands of soldiers' lives over your career. If you had to distill one key lesson just for today, it doesn't have to be your top lesson, top of mind today, what do you hope every soldier and veteran takes away from them after service? What would it be? We'll start with you, Colonel Rocke.
Yeah,
first,
please give the general the last word, please. I would just say immense pride in what you did for not only your unit, the men and women left and right, but for our country. It truly, when we all raised our right hand, it was about not service, but a national service, right? National security, and what we're doing for the country. When you serve in uniform, whatever color it is, you should be proud of what you're doing. Because I know I am, the general is, my family is, and almost every American is. So it's a small percentage, less than 1% that are serving, and you should be proud of your service.
That's right. And to really cap off what Adam just said, we talk all the time about elite and things in our country. The men and women who serve, who are willing to raise their right hand and say, send me, are truly elite in our nation. Less than 1% serves. I would tell the active force and the Guard and Reserve of all the different services today, I would tell them right now, you have the privilege to wear the uniform of the greatest nation on earth. You are part of the best team ever formed. Your duty in life is to take that cloth, that precious cloth of our nation, and just make it a little bit better every day. Leave that jersey in a better place every day. And if you do that, and I promise you, if you do that, we will always be the land of the free because of the brave.
Well said, sir. Well said. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here today. It's an absolute honor for us and for our listeners as well. Thank you for your storied careers and service, doing some of the toughest things on the planet.
And your rugged good looks.
Taking care of people the whole way. And I think all that was so that you could do the most important work of your life, which I believe that you're doing right now, which is helping after. And is there anywhere, Adam, we'll go to you first and then finish up with you, sir. Is there any links or places that folks can get a hold of you?
We sure can. So, and the general talked about Katie's Way and Katie's Way Plus, which, I'm at Katie's Way and Katie's Way Plus now because the general asked if I would serve alongside him on this mission. we've been changing lives for a long portion of our careers and post-transition, but now we're saving lives. And that's what makes Katie's Way so important. We've got a great website, katieswayplus.com. We have 15 locations and counting. We're scaling. We think we'll get to about close to 30 by the end of this year. We're literally outside of military installations from the Midwest to the West Coast, and then we're going to expand a little bit more to the East Coast eventually. But we are same-day walk-in evaluation service, and not many people can say that. With the other modalities that the general talked about, non-invasive to med management, to counseling, to therapy, and some other things that we have in the works. So it's an honor to wake up in the morning and save lives at Katie's Way and Katie's Way Plus.
Absolutely. And then if you need me, you can get me at paulfunkleadershipconsulting.com, which is a mouthful, right? But that's what we came up with. So, and I was just honored to be with you today. I really, really hope that if we can change one life or save one life by doing these kinds of things and reaching out through this kind of a mode or medium, then it's all worth doing.
It means, again, like I said, it means so much that you spent time with us today. I feel like we've done something pretty great here. So this may be our best episode. We'll find out.
Well, you certainly got the best looking two guys on there.
That's right. Me and Adam, and I won't say which Adam I'm talking
exactly
about.
Right. Thank God
General's
Stacy was
just jealous. He
here
can't grow a
and
beard like
Holly
me.
to add some class.
Right?
Thanks, fellas.
What you three are doing is immensely incredible too.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, and the general said it too. But you're listening, but you're telling stories too, and this is exactly what not only our servicemen and women need to hear, but America needs to hear. So thanks
That's
for
right.
what you're doing too.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you visiting us today. And Alphas, please stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
A veteran is a veteran.
A veteran is a veteran.
A veteran is a veteran.
The American Legion embraces all current and former members of the military and endeavors to help them transition into their communities.
We are Veterans Strengthening America.
We are the American Legion.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. And I know we promised you some scuttlebutt, but we had such a great interview that we thought we'd just kind of wrap up with some final thoughts, some, lasting impressions. Joe, Adam, I know you were especially in the feels with this one, so let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, I just think, that one question I have, we're reflecting about the time at Fort Riley together. That was, one of the most meaningful parts, of my career. Platoon leader time, company commander time. After that, I went to the career course and I had a training command in the Joint Readiness Training Center before getting out. So it's where I was a commander, and that guy was in charge of the whole installation. So it's incredibly meaningful, and I didn't know how much it would be until I saw he was going to be a guest. And then I went back and kind of revisited the division motto, no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. And I think when I was kind of preparing my notes, I was like, man, that has been such a defining motto for the last 10 years, and I haven't even realized it. So when I was postulating the question, it all just kind of hit me, and it ended up being a really special moment and special time. And I just really appreciative of him to come and give us the time.
Yeah. I mean, you had me kind of in the feels and a little bit misty-eyed, and I was thinking about the Big Red One a lot. And a lot happened to me during the surge when I was there. And ironically, I come from a long line of military in my family, and they all encouraged me to join the Air Force for one reason or another. And I often tell people that I joined the Air Force to wear an Army uniform because the nature of my job, especially after 9/11, I deployed a lot with the Army. And, it's the Army tradition that you wear the combat patch on is the right arm, right? Refresh my memory.
Oh yeah.
Air Force has different traditions, but the Army taught me really fast. And so a lot of the Army units, it was something that I had to learn early on, and they were very quick to ingratiate me into their units. And I'm so thankful for that they brought me under their wing and really brought me into their units in so many ways. And you know, the first ID were so wonderful. And my my dear friend Katie Robinson and I were on a mission when she was shot and wounded by a sniper when we were the first ID. And one of the first things they did was slap a big red one on my right arm and said, "You definitely earned this combat patch, and you're going to wear this with pride for the rest of this deployment." And that was during the surge. That was the third and final combat patch that I had earned from the Army, and so it definitely had me in the feels as well today. And so I'll be thinking about that quite a bit.
It's
It's
the only
interesting.
it's the only combat patch, I earn. I just, you go whenever you're told to go. And in my 10 years, it was just one time. And so, yeah, it's very meaningful for me to have, and I get a lot of ones in my, it's a 1-1 attack reconnaissance battalion, 1st combat aviation brigade, 1st infantry division. And the cool thing in the laser code for the laser coded energy in the Apache is a default to quad ones. So it's just like,
Must be your magic number. Have you played lottery lately?
Well, interestingly enough, I was born at 1:11 in the morning on July 1st. So this is
what? That is so odd.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like a very divine, like that I was supposed to be there. It feels that way. So
that's amazing.
Cool.
Well, I think your next child should be named One. Maybe their middle name should be One.
11D1.
It's okay
Juan,
that I was
maybe
my
Juan?
mother's second
Juan.
son. It's okay that I was number 1, Mom.
Or maybe like XUON, like some play on one.
Yeah.
Should be good. Yeah.
Joe, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good name for a kid. No,
Obi-Wan?
Just
Obi-Wan.
Obi blank.
Kenobi.
It's funny because these moments don't really represent it's hard to put into words. These moments, these things that we talk about, these people that we're with represent an entire age in our lives. And when you're talking about the history of man, you talk about the Bronze Age, you talk about the age of technology, you talk about the modern, but for us, you have to take these things that other people would find incredibly traumatic. Some people can't even read about the stuff that people have lived through, and people like us do what we do so that they don't have to, if that's what they want to do, is live their life without knowing about these things. And that's okay. But I've sort of jokingly talked about that house that we lived in Fallujah with my Fox Company 3rd Platoon as like a dysfunctional childhood home. In a weird sort of way, I grew up there, and I joke around. I like to have fun, but there's a lot more to me than just that. And not everybody gets to see that. And I've tried to be more honest with myself. I've tried to be more honest with the people around me by being emotionally vulnerable. You guys have all seen it. We joke around about it, but it comes down to, it's easier for me to be all or nothing. And I would rather be all honest than nothing honest. So we take these moments, and for you, it's the Big Red One. For me, it was the Battle of Fallujah. It was living with those guys in that house. And as dumb as it was, where you're taking, showers with baby wipes, which aren't showers, in case you think I'm confused about that. I'm well aware it wasn't showering. But you take these things and you realize that this was so impactful for me. And it took so many years for me to unpack all of these things that got crammed into, like Stacy, you mentioned the Army taught you fast. But you're still learning those lessons. You're still gathering things from that time, and I am too. And so right now, the age that we're in, there's a lot of stress in the world, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of empathy or a lot of love, but it is there. It is there. Just people that tell you not to focus on that are leading you astray, and are costing you your mental health. Because there are people out there that love you, and if you don't feel that way, maybe it's time to get more involved with something, whether it's the Legion or church or whatever it is that helps you fill that gap that you have.
I was going to say another thing that really kind of stood out to this, thinking back, is like when we were starting our first nonprofit in 2015 and getting out, like trying to take on TBI and having a solution set that worked. And we're just like, we're all the general officers. We're all the admirals. Well, they're, I was a naive, 03 that had just, transitioned out. They were still fighting the war. But maybe the older ones, the older guard wasn't so active in the way that we needed, the general funks, or like, my boss, call him boss. He's really a collaboration partner, Lieutenant General Steele, 78 years old. He was the second highest ranking Marine when he got out in 1999. Still doing this work, still serving. Why? Because it's the greatest thing that he do. We always talk about it and we say, what do you do with the gift of life? What do you do with the gift of life?
God,
We came back.
so complex. Yeah.
Like not everybody did, right? And so it's like, what we're talking about, and what General Funk was talking about, all the ways in which we can help veterans and service members transition, the programs that we can have so that they can regain purpose and a mission, so that they can do something with the gift of life. And so that's like
Can I interrupt you there just for a second, Adam?
Yeah.
Some people haven't gotten over the guilt of the gift of life yet. And
Ooh.
first of all, it's accepting that it's okay, that you can feel the guilt, but then you have to acknowledge it, get the help you need in order to carry that with you, and be okay with that, and then realize that it is a gift and live for those who don't, and find a way to find a new mission and move forward with it.
I think that's one of the main points that I try to make too, is like, if you can't help somebody come home mentally, physically, right? If you can't help them get over that or whatever it is for them, then it doesn't matter how many incredible programs or what kind of infrastructure we have or how much equine therapy, because if they're living in that constant state of fight or flight, of like the misery, whatever that is for that individual as they define it, right? Then that's a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think, like, I don't think we got into it too much on this episode, although it was also incredibly validating to share that perspective with General Funk of, the work and these treatments and therapies that are so important to the work that I do, and how those map and enable people to benefit from those transition services and things like that. So I think the net that we're casting is, it's this large, complex, comprehensive thing. And it's not any one thing, and it's not that thing at any specific, time. It's sequenced, and all these parts need to be working together. So I guess like it was validating on so many fronts today for me, and inspiring, and seeing this, complex ecosystem that those who served are helping to create and cultivate and move forward as like we're moving forward through life. So yeah, I thought it was powerful.
Today was so good for me.
It was great.
Yeah.
It's good to be reminded every once in a while.
All right, Alphas. Well, was it good for you? It was a little bit longer one, but we appreciate if you've listened this far. Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.